Okay, I'm working on this portion today of this painting. It's the hand of a woman bathing. Probably call this painting Stephanie, based on the model. I'm not showing you the reference for her because kind of respect for her. Um, so I wanted to say some things that might help other painters that I've found. It took it to me a long time to figure all this stuff out, but I am sharing it. So I use M.Graham oil paints. Um, they're made with walnut oil, and they're healthier. I'm what I consider a healthy painter because I don't want to paint with things that are going to kill me. Like a lot of artists will use things like turpentines, terpenoids that all are cancer causing. I use an all natural turpentine, really. It's called a citrus solvent for milk paint. And it's all natural. It's made with orange peels, 99% orange peels, 1% water. And so that's my thinner, which works out really good with my paints. And I'm using, it has some paint on it, this brush here, which is, I don't know if you see that, Escoda, and they're from Barcelona. What I like about this brush is it's a little bit stiff, but it allows me to paint with the tip of it almost linear, and then allows me to drag across the form. So I could actually make my shapes, and this is probably about the right size for this small area. I'm going to integrate the hand with this kind of loose feeling of paint that's around the hand. Some of that I'll probably get tightened up as I go, but and sometimes I'll kind of pause my talking because sometimes it's hard to talk and paint at the same time. But I kind of work all over different areas why I paint, and I'm using more or less a cad red, a white, maybe a little yellow ochre, or even a little bit of cobalt. I could thin that paint just a little bit, which is kind of nice because when you thin the paint, it allows you to actually like more like merge with the other colors. These pinks almost have sometimes almost a purplish feel, just fine. I try to get as close to the color as possible. You might want to call me a colorist in some ways. I don't know if that'd be the best description of me or not, but I try to go for color. I know some artists will try to go for more values and actually almost get rid of all the color. But I've always just really loved color. So I'm not too worried about getting it exactly right, but it's pretty exact at the same time. And it will change. So when I lay it down, I'm looking, and does that look right compared to the reference I'm looking at? And then what I'll do is I'll adjust it as need be. I'm looking at the color, I'm looking at the shape, the form. One of the things that I've noticed recently, because I've been doing just a figure drawing class, and realizing pretty much everything I was taught in school was wrong. It really messed me up. Yeah, sort of say. They're not still messing people up, but it's just that shapes, they're not an outline. They go in so many different directions, and if you start drawing something and you're looking at trying to do an outline and filling it in, it doesn't really work at all. See, this color here is like there, up there, but when it comes down, it changes to more of this yellow ochre color. I did find out I pretty much like yellow ochre quite a bit. So if I'm looking over here and I'm thinking, okay, that has more yellow ochre over there. So I'm trying to look at form and shape. You really, as a painter, I call it multitasking, because I feel that there's just so many things that you have to do it all at one time. You're looking at the drawing, you're looking at the shape, the form, the lighting. So like that color I'm looking at right now, it is kind of a pink color, but there's a little bit of a purple cast to it. So, I'll get that with that, just a touch of cobalt blue, and then the cad red. And then I'll try to lighten it up with the white. And white's one of those colors that you have to watch, because you can make a painting look really anemic. Get too much white in it. Kind of redrawing that area, and as I'm seeing it needs to be pinker, maybe lighter. It also almost like this, almost like fades in here. So it's not like you're seeing a real edge there. As it comes down here towards this thumb, it gets a little yellower. The other thing going on here is that I have this really bright yellow. And you would think that would maybe cause me problems, but I kind of like it. I like the way it merges in with the paints, gives a nice kind of glow to them. Sometimes I dip in and get a little more of that citrus solvent. Trying to put just a tad of green. It might not be even easy to see on this video, because videos aren't the same as seeing something in real life. But there's just ever so slight tint of green over here. It's almost it's luminous type green. So you can see I'm kind of dabbing around different areas. Put that in there, and then I realized as soon as I did that it needs to be pinker. So come back over. So I got these different, I might call them pools. They're not so sloppy pools, but areas of color that I can kind of dip back into. This seems like it needs a little bit more yellow. I think it's really green there though. Just light, see, I was just brushing over lightly with that. Adding a little bit more white to my palette over here. Not a whole lot, just something I could, I mean, some people I know, they put down tons of paint in the beginning and it's like, oh my gosh. But I just feel that waste so much. And it's not like I'm not trying to waste or anything, but it's just like, I don't see the need to. That's not bright enough yet. Still not light enough. Sometimes I'll take and use a paper towel to kind of pull some of that paint off my brush. But a lot of times I'll just leave all that paint on my brush at the same time. So as that form comes this way, it picks up those greens. This green kind of comes into here. So when I'm doing that, I'm noticing, okay, I see that green's nice. And then I'm realizing that green, and then it goes almost into an orange right here. Just a little dab of orange. That might have been too strong. I could come back later. And that green's gonna get used again over here to bring this, it's kind of dark there, but comes down into these greens. There. So it's just a matter of continually looking and kind of measuring visually, like, is it light enough? Is it dark enough? Is it the right color? And as soon as you lay it down, you can pretty much tell. See, that was too much. If I just do light little tabs, because then I can come back and change it a little bit. Soften that in a little bit. It's just that your eye kind of picks things up as you're looking and painting and you're making these relationships. So kind of right now I have cad red, white, I'm using an orange, cad orange. There's one dark color I use a lot too, which I like, is, it's not a black, it's raw umber. It's kind of a dark brown. Just use that in one little spot. I'll use it again. Eventually these little dabs of color do dry up. So I need to add a little more. That dark color that I was talking about, add a little blue to it just to deepen a little bit more there. Oh, probably too much. Yeah, that looks pretty good. Come back with a little bit of yellow ochre right there to soften it. You just have to be patient. Wasn't always my best trait. Probably still isn't. So I put that color down. As soon as I did, I thought it was blue. Green. But then I realized it needed a little bit more. There's that light green there. And the nice thing about working this way is that you can just manipulate that color. It's just that little bit of dragging that I'm doing on it just will change it. You know, that green I just put on top of that orange. It might look even pretty abstract right now. It'll start to make sense. But it's not going to make a whole lot of sense, like complete. Like it's not going to look like, oh my gosh, you really rendered the heck out of it. No, that's not what I want. I needed to work with the rest of the painting, which is more more impressionistic, really, I think. And the thing that you'll notice is when you're using like warms and cool colors, I mean, that really is the deal, because that's what, you know, you put an orange, which is hot, against a blue, which is cool, you get a lot of change happening. And you can tell where the form is changing and the shapes are moving in a different direction, just like you would do with a value. You know, you could do the same thing. And I try to stroke across the color kind of in the direction it's going to help you feel that form. So it's very impressionistic. And I guess that's part of what I did like about going for this series, is that I'm trying to, I like some of Degas' bathers that he had. And had always been wanting to do this painting probably for a long time. The other thing is, you know, some people know this, some people don't, but yeah, nudes are very accepted in painting and in art. They're not naked. It is art. And so they're painted in a way that is respectful to humanity, to women, to men. See those fingernails just stick out just so subtly, but it's not going to be that much. Just trying to get those form shapes. I wouldn't even mind if a little of this yellow ends up showing through. So I got some of the colors down somewhat correct. As correct as, you know, that kind of stuff goes. So there's some different things happening back here. Kind of work into the painting itself. This is the soap suds that are in the water, because obviously she's bathing. So if you're bathing, I guess you generally have some soap, right? And I can't say I'm a great uh, painter of suds or anything. You know, it's not about that. Somebody said, "Oh, what's the trick for doing this? What's the trick for doing that?" Well, it isn't tricks. It's just all observation. And one guy told me years ago when I asked him how he did that, he said, "You just paint it until it looks right," and that basically is true. You just keep modifying and adjusting until eventually, you know, that part that you're trying to paint looks right. And like that was too bright, what I just put down there. It's a little bluer. See, I'm looking at like defining that finger and putting the shape in and showing where that thumb is. Thumb is going to be pretty simple. I'm not going to see a lot of detail on it, just enough. Now I'm seeing how I could soften this in. And this is going this way, and it's going to come out to here. Just going to have some of that blue in it. And a little bit of red. It's like a little bit of purple. Blue and red make purple. So I'm just stroking back and forth over that. Kind of there's cast light from the edge of the tub here over the water, so it changes color through there a little bit. I'm just slowly modifying that color. It's kind of a pattern that happens as water moves. Again, this is just things you learn and observe. I guess it's part of being conscious is just being able to observe things and find out sometimes we're really not that conscious as we should be. You ever find yourself driving down a street and then you wonder, how did I get here? Well, it's probably because you weren't conscious. You weren't thinking about what you were doing. You're on autopilot. And that's kind of what we have to be careful of when we're painting, is we want to be real conscious of what we're looking at. I'm looking at the foreground, the background, thinking of it as a hand, maybe as shapes, and then see how they all come together. Just like dragging across that form a little there. See, that's that green color. It's a different green that I'm using there. It's a little darker. It's a sap green. This is a little bit more orange red there. Just enough to give you a little bit of feeling of that inside of that thumb. Just dragging across the form a little. That orange color I have there has to be a little lighter. Kind of comes this way. See, this edge here really gets lost. If it wasn't for the color change, you might not even see it. So like if you were doing a value drawing there, I mean, you probably won't even see it because it would be the same value. But with color, you could see how it changes there. There, that has that little brighter area through there. That light green just helps pull that up a little bit. Just modifying that color. And maybe somebody else would tell you, boy, I would never do it that way. Well, that's fine. Just mixing what I think is the right color over here on my palette. Realize my drawing was wrong there. So you're always constantly checking your drawing. And if you need to adjust it, you draw it and readjust it. It's a nice thing about paint is that you can adjust it. It's just a brush. You're not trying to render something three-dimensional necessarily. You're just looking at what are the colors that you're seeing. That is where it is, I think, more impressionistic. So that's too blue. And make it pinker. Still very, more impressionistic at this point still. I think it's going to stay that way too. Try to get around to rendering, probably not the best word, articulating colors. Sometimes they seem like the colors do go from the object into the object, from the outside into the object, which is almost like you're painting air at that time. Some people have talked about that. I've read a lot and studied a lot of different things and spent a lot of time working on all these things. Um, I've said many times that, you know, being an artist is something where you have to be able to learn the rest of your life. And it's really true. But I think that if I wasn't constantly learning at it, I wouldn't like it. Because I found that things that I learn too easily, then I just give it up because it's like not a challenge. I want to be able to be challenged at what I'm doing. So I'm not wiping my brush off that often, really. I don't really know why either, but it's just what I do. I let that paint build up in the bristles and I'm all right with it. So when I add paint onto my brush, I'm more or less adding it to the tip. And sometimes, like just now, I just pulled it out in a paper towel to clean it out a little bit. Just coming back and forth over things. And then I come back over this whole thing another time too, to you can see how that hand is starting to show up a little bit here. I think I know what that color is, but kind of working up to it. Not to go too crazy over the top and then have to come back and redo it. So you're starting to see the fingers coming out a little bit more. There's not a lot of paint on my brush. Just a little on that tip. Kind of liking how this is starting to shape up now. It's not too crazy stand out from all that's around it. So that constant going back and forth, really important. I learned a lot of that using the painting knife. When I was painting with the painting knife. Because when you paint with the painting knife, you have to sometimes do a lot of cutting back and forth. You lay down the color, then you have to cut it back. Still think it's important that people, artists, maybe paint with a painting knife for a couple years. I think it's very helpful. So even in that little area I'm working at right now, I was using the light green, but it shifts to this blue back here. Probably too strong, but now I'll come back. I'm looking at the shapes and I'm trying to define. Put this back in there. There's no rush here. Some of these colors I have mixed on my palette. I can come back and grab again if I need them. Just kind of nice. almost completely lost that finger there next to the thumb. So I gotta get it back in there. Sometimes when you paint, you get into painting, you're like, oh my gosh, I never realized how difficult this part would be. It seems like there's always those parts in a painting that get to be more that way. So I'm trying to stand back from it a little bit now and see what is it that will help make this start to hold together. And I think it's almost got too much color in here. So I'm going to try to bring the color down. If you have a painting, and obviously there's in this painting, if you see it later, you'll see the whole thing. You'll see that the part that's really most important to me is the head, where she's washing her hair. And so there's a lot of parts that, like in here, that I might not give that much detail to, because I don't want it to conflict with the rest of the painting. So there's that kind of balance too. Like if you paint everything to be the same, then there's like no hero part. So you need that hero part. There we go. Maybe somebody else would say, oh my gosh, I would never paint it that way. Well, yeah, because they're not me. And I'm not them. And all those people that think that they know what they're doing, probably including me, um, there is no one way, one answer. Do this process, go to this school, learn this technique, and now you're a painter. I mean, if you really think it's that, you've kind of missed it. Um, I don't know if that's off what you're seeing or not. Oh, yeah. I guess I should look at this once in a while. Yeah. I like that area though.